to learn more. That's 1-800-405-GOLD. All right, now, just real quick, let's get on to Israel, and then I'll close this out by explaining why I think we're looking at the reincarnation of George H.W. Bush, the father of George Bush, in other words, Bush 41 versus Bill Clinton, after I learned some history that, frankly, I probably should have known but did not know. But before we get to that, I want to play these video clips from Israel. I'm going to give you my opinion. Let me just break it down. Here's what happened, and then we'll run through the videos. Real quickly. So, 6 Israeli hostages, one with American citizenship, I believe dual citizenship, were murdered over the weekend. They were alive still, including one of the ones that was more famously known, if I could use that word, Hirsch. Hirsch is what he's known as, and a lot of people were rooting for him. We've seen video of him where he literally had lost part of his arm, and there was video as recently as April or May, where he was still seen alive. His parents recently spoke at the DNC, letting just asking for people to basically step up and help him out, let him know that he was loved. But as the IDF were closing in on some Hamas terrorists inside of one of the tunnels, apparently the 6 people that were alive realized that the IDF were on their trail, and they went ahead and murdered all of those people in cold blood. Now, why would they do that when IDF is on their trail? Obviously, to sow more chaos, and also, I would think, to send a message: don't come for us in these tunnels. We have more hostages still, apparently over 100 hostages. I believe it's 101. If I don't know if they're dead or alive. I suspect the vast majority of them are dead, but 101 hostages that remain. And I suspect the message is, listen, don't come for us or we'll kill more, and also to sow chaos and discontent. So I'm going to play you a quick video. Let's show the video of the crowd if we could, Gabe. And I'm going to tell you why these protests are a huge mistake on Israel's part. Carl, you're not Jewish. You don't have, listen, I'm not Jewish, but I have common sense. And I know what evil is, and I know what good is, and trying to work a ceasefire deal with Iranian proxies, Hezbollah or Hamas is just stupid. It honestly, there's no other way to say it except it's stupid. Let's go ahead and roll the video of the protests here, Gabe, por favor. Wow. So I believe that's in Tel Aviv. I mean, the streets are packed, and basically the pressure is on. The pressure is on against Netanyahu, right? All right. So what's been happening is the U.S. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been withholding arms from Israel, or slow walking arms to Israel, and a bunch. Apparently, there are a bunch of weapons. Tom Cotton had mentioned later on in that interview, or earlier on in that interview with Kristen Walker on Meet the Press. It wasn't just these strategic big bombs, guided bombs that would do some serious damage. Apparently, there were several types of weapons that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are intentionally slow walking to Israel. They're actually doing the same to Ukraine. I think they wanted to drag these wars out so that they could use them as political props for their foreign policy chops as they head up to the election. I think that's what they're doing, but they're causing nothing but destruction. It is so dumb. Listen, I'm sorry. It defies common sense to ask Israel, the only democratic nation in that region, to have a ceasefire with terrorists. And by the way, Israel has already offered and was willing to comply with ceasefires, but the Hamas terrorists were not willing. Hezbollah are not willing. The Ayatollah of Iran is not willing. And not the people of Iran, but their leaders. Their leaders are evil. The only thing that they understand is strength. All right. And so You still have Biden. I'm sure is hungry for a legacy. Kamala Harris, the same thing. They want Benjamin Netanyahu out of there. They want a ceasefire. Notice they're not calling for a ceasefire in Iran. But it is just plain up stupid to think that you can ask terrorists for a ceasefire as if they're going to listen to you. They're terrorists. They think you're evil. So you're calling for a ceasefire. All these people that are calling for a ceasefire, man, I hate to say this, they're just inviting another October 7th. I hope that Netanyahu ignores them for their own safety. Let's roll to the next video, por favor, Gabe. This is more of Israel. This is the funeral of Hirsch. Of Hirsch Goldberg, Poland is his name. And again, I knew him by Hirsch on media, forgive me, but Hirsch Goldberg, Poland is his full name. And, apparently they have funerals really quickly out there. So they just found the body, discovered the body over the weekend. So that's the video that you're seeing. Here's Alan Dershowitz putting this into proper context, basically saying what I've said. But this is a guy that understands context, being Jewish, being an attorney, being, traveling to Israel. This guy knows what he's speaking of. Let's go ahead and roll the video of Alan Dershowitz on the question as to whether or not there should be a ceasefire between Israel and terrorist organizations in Gaza.
The Israeli government has accepted the full terms of ceasefire agreement. Who's rejected it? Hamas has rejected it. You will not see a single sign among the protesters referring to that. They all say, we want a ceasefire. We want a ceasefire. Let's have a ceasefire. All right. So Israel has agreed to a ceasefire. Maybe take your signs down. Maybe make a phone call to your friends at Hamas, your friends in Iran, who are probably financing some of what's going on, and tell them to accept the ceasefire. It is such amazing hypocrisy for protesters against Israel for not accepting the ceasefire. These people are such ignoramuses. Their bigotry blinds them so much. They're such useful idiots. They don't even know. They're protesting the wrong people if they want a ceasefire. If you want a ceasefire, protest Hamas. If you want a ceasefire, praise Israel for agreeing to the ceasefire.
All right, so Alan Dershowitz hit it. I mean, he hit the nail on the head. You should be praising Israel. You should be protesting Hamas. Again, this is just, I hate to say it, this is just pure stupidity. Israel has offered a ceasefire. And why would you want a ceasefire with terrorists? All that you're going to ensure is that there's another October 7th if you continue to let these people get away with it. And by the way, I think you should be protesting. I think he can add to that. I think you should be protesting Secretary of State Blinken. I think you should be protesting VP Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden, because they're slow walking the IDF's defeat. This war should have been over with within 2 weeks to 2 weeks to a month, from what I've heard from IDF people on X. All right. But you have this prolonged war that's completely unnecessary, allowing these people to keep the hostages. They should have been feeling the heat immediately for taking hostages, and we would have had much more saved. It's likely that Hirsch and others would be alive. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe it is likely if Israel would apply the force and pressure they needed immediately to get their hostages back. But because of the Biden-Harris administration, warning them and playing this political game, they weren't able to do so. All right, so moving on from that, let me close it out with this. I think what we're seeing is the resurgence. And by the way, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. But I think what we're seeing is the reincarnation of the George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton campaign. The only difference is Kamala Harris never won a single vote in a primary like Bill Clinton did. But there was an article that appeared this weekend or over the weekend from New York Post entitled "The Harris Campaign is Riding a Wave to Defeat and Maybe Setting a Trap We've Seen Before." All right. And so I think, again, we're reliving this George H.W. Bush versus Bill Clinton campaign. And it might come to the point, and I think it is actually, that Democrats are going to regret ditching Biden. Yes, he's a dementia patient. There's no doubt about it. But he has an excuse. Many people have said it before for not being able to talk. Kamala Harris has no excuse. This chick is hiding from the media, and the only interview that she's given to the media had to be edited. She had to have a support animal with her, or the support dude with her, Tim Walz. I mean, that's absolutely despicable. I don't think that's a smart play, because I think you show weakness to the world that's watching. But for those of you that may not be in the know or may not recall or don't know this part of history, Bill Clinton trolled George H.W. Bush in the 1992 campaign, basically. So when George H.W. Bush was ducking debates during the fall of 92, according to the New York Post, Clinton's campaign sent a 7-foot chicken mascot to every one of Bush's campaign events. That's actually really smart. I hate to admit it. And it was effective. Eventually, every stop that he made, all right, or every campaign trip, that he made, there was this 7-foot chicken. Oh, I hate to admit that's a good idea, but it's a good idea. So basically, George H.W. Bush ended up caving. He gave Clinton his 3 debates. Clinton ended up winning or emerging as the alpha male. I mean, you guys might recall, read my lips, no new taxes. George H.W. Bush at that time, conservatives were upset, even though I wasn't into politics at all. I mean, I've seen that clip, 1,000 times. Metaphor, I mean, not literally, but you know what I mean? I've seen it a lot. And so the conservative movement was upset with George H.W. Bush, because here he is coming in after Reagan, running as Reagan's 3rd term, and this guy decides to raise taxes. Not a good look. So again, Kamala CNN interview filled with softball questions, not a lot of pushback, some decent questions, but I still no pushback. But it didn't settle the question of whether or not Kamala Harris is ready. And I don't think she is. Even liberal media was saying the preparedness. This is one guy, I forget from which news organization. The preparedness issue is potent in large part because Democrats and liberal reporters themselves ceded the ground. One reporter said. Another reporter said Harrison from CNN said Harrison Walz's first major interview was big on generalities and soft on policies, much like Harris herself. So all she did is fuel the flames after that interview. All right. That interview was absolutely disastrous. And of course, she's been guarded and she stayed away from cameras, or I shouldn't say from cameras, because obviously she's the vice president, but she stayed away from interviews like that after that Lester Holt interview where he asked her, have you been to the border? And she was like, I've been to the border. And he was like, you haven't been to the border. And she was like, I haven't been to, Paris or something like that either, something stupid that she said. And that was so disastrous. She decided, I'm not doing interviews for a while. According to even the New York Times reported at the time that Harris, quote, all but went into a bunker for about a year, avoiding many interviews out of what aides said was a fear of making mistakes and disappointing Mr. Biden. So she's hiding like Biden, but apparently she's hiding, or at least trying to evade debates, just like George H.W. Bush did in 1992. Biden has no one has confidence in Kamala Harris. Biden has put her down, claiming in a biography that, quote, Harris was a work in progress. A political profile of Kamala Harris said that a reporter of the, quote unquote, dysfunction in the VP's office, her own staff widely complained of disorganization and, quote unquote, managed chaos. A Washington Post profile uttered the same sentiments. Just last month, Biden's own staff dissed Harris by quote, reportedly denigrated her political strength and suggested that she would not be as strong a candidate against Donald Trump, close quote. The Atlantic claimed that, quote, few people seem to think she's ready to be president, close quote. These are liberal outlets. Another liberal outlet reported early in his administration, President Biden criticized his VP for her lack of gravitas. All right. But the media is still kissing her butt. They're still determined to put her or help her cross the finish line over Donald Trump. Here's one of the things that New York Post reported. As much reporters don't want to see Trump win, most reporters also don't want to miss this next turn of the story when Harris inevitably trips up from a verbal miscue. I'm not sure if I believe that. I believe that these people are so in the tank for Kamala Harris, just like we saw with Kristen Walker and Tom Cotton grilling him. They won't grill Democrats in that same way. They'll try to look legitimate. They'll ask a good question, but they won't follow up. They'll just let Kamala Harris or Tim Walz say whatever the heck they're going to say. But I'm telling you, this is kicking Joe Biden to the curb may prove to be a disaster for Democrats. Here's where some polling stands. The Real Clear Politics polling average at this time of year, anyway, in the campaign in